Two words, United States, no love, no breaks, low brow, high stakes, crack smoke, black folks, Big Macs, fat folks, ecstasy capsules, presidential scandals, everybody move. Two words, Mos Def, Kanye West, hot shit, calm down, get back, ghetto people, got this, game pawn lock, shit, gun pawn cock, shit, we won't stop, shit, everybody move. Two words, BKNY, Bed-Stuy, too harsh, too hungry, too many, that's why. These streets, no game, can't ball, don't play, heavy traffic, one lane, everybody move. Two words, Mos Def, blackjack, hot shit, calm down, get back, ghetto people, got this. Game pawn lock, gun pawn cock, we won't stop, everybody move. This video is going to be an explanation of why Kanye West is not only the greatest artist of our generation, but either the best or second best artist in the history of all art in all of the world. The only person who I think might be a better artist is Salvador Dali. So when I say artist, I mean all forms of art. Salvador Dali was himself living art. Kanye West is himself living art. Before watching the rest of this video, I very seriously recommend that you read Frederick Jameson's Postmodernism or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism. That's one book, and it's deliberately named akin to Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. So, since we're talking about the greatest of all time, I gotta pull out a nice expensive Honduran cigar, because Cuba is not the only country that makes good cigars. The only records I have of Kanye's are College Dropout and his 3-disc, 3-vinyl release of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, though his best album is Late Registration. His work as an artist goes well beyond his own albums and goes well beyond music, some of which we'll get into, but it is his music that primarily makes him the greatest of all time. The fact that he does work in other areas certainly helps confirm that. He is an artist, not just a musician. Not to diminish people who are just musicians. That's not the way I meant that. Alright, so I'm not sure where to start exactly. We're all starched up, vitamins and minerals. I can't think of the next line. The opening line to Lupe's Miro. So, Democritus was a contemporary of Aristotle. He preceded him. He came first. And he explained that life is made of tiny elements that we now call atoms. I think that's what he called them too, but I don't speak Greek very well. So, I believe in Einstein. I believe in God, and the way Einstein explained God, he didn't explain it, but the way he explained his own belief was that he believed in the God of Spinoza, as presented in Spinoza's Ethics. Now, Spinoza's Ethics is one of the least accessible books in the world. And by accessible, I don't mean available to get. It's very easy to find. I think it's free online because it was printed in, I don't know, 1680 or something like that. So, the way Spinoza defines God is in keeping with the description of Democritus that we are all composed of small things, atoms. Now, Spinoza explains that we are all part of one substance, which isn't to say that we aren't individuals, because each person, each animal, every tree, every atom, or combination of atoms, is a mode or form, or the word he uses is mode, but it's a piece of one puzzle. Now, when people die, I believe in basically the Christian explanation that each individual has a soul, and I might be wrong with some of this religious stuff, but the way, obviously I might be wrong about something we can't prove, but I'm speaking of interpretations of ancient literature. My understanding is that the Jewish idea is something like, when we die, we become a star. And that kind of makes sense when we consider the way the universe is expanding. I don't know what kind of sense that makes literally. Like, I don't know that every person... there's a song, every N-word is a star. It's by somebody or other. I know the Roots sampled it. Except they changed it to everybody is a star, which I personally prefer. So, we are all a part of God. We are all part of the way the universe knows itself, and we might have some sort of non-physical component that extends beyond life into an afterlife. There are many ways that could work. Reincarnation isn't outside of that scope. But the way I see it is we simply possess atoms from people who came before us, and that is part of what makes up our personalities, a part of what makes it up. The other piece is that is substance dualism for you philosophers. Read Descartes. It's really not that good, but it's the basic idea. Meditations, that is. I mean, it's not bad. It's just really basic stuff. You can watch The Matrix and learn it. If you read Meditations and watch The Matrix, you'll get it. And I'm not saying The Matrix is right, because I think that's kind of a bad analogy. I think there is something like divine intervention, and to read more about that, study the occasionalists. I'm not going to break down all these philosophies because they're just not necessary to explain why Kanye West is the first or second best artist of all time. Now the point is, I don't know whose atoms Kanye has, but I think he is atomically comprised of some of the world's greatest artists, or perhaps one in particular. I believe that I have or possess many of the same atoms as did Salvador Dali. Explaining how and why is not something I can do. I'm not saying take my word for it. I'm just saying that's the way I feel. And I don't mean it in an insane, weird way. I'm explaining it as through science, with some possibility of something non-scientific, the soul, but the rest is all compatible with physical science. And the brilliant thing about Spinoza is that he wrote his ontology in geometric form. So he used the scientific method not only to prove the existence of God in a sense, but to ultimately explain what it means to live the good life, which is the ultimate objective of all philosophy, most philosophy. Some philosophy is figuring out, what. The rest is, okay, so whatever about the what do we do now? Heidegger, why is there something instead of nothing? But that question only really matters to philosophers, because practically there is something and not nothing. And it's not that question doesn't matter, it's just that that's purely philosophical and not practical. There is practical use. I don't normally smoke such large cigars. Usually I like cigarillos. If you're wondering why I'm smoking it like an idiot. Anyway, religion, in large part, is where music originated. Songs were choral gospels singing for God. Now I'm talking about Western music, not all music. So Western music is basically church music in its roots. And the Catholic Church wouldn't allow the certain organ music to be released. There was a piece in particular that Mozart learned by ear and started playing for the first time ever outside of only very specific churches. And from there, jump ahead through opera, and you start getting into soul, R&B, and then of course what I'd skipped over is Negro spirituals, songs that slaves would sing while they were working in the fields. Now, Negro spirituals are ultimately the origins of ebonics, street slang, and most of, if not all of, the music used, not only in hip-hop, but rock and roll, any form of jazz, any form of not purely classical or not form of classical Western music. Now, by Western, I mean Western European. So, but that is the music that is fairly hegemonous, ubiquitous throughout the globe. We all listen to, everybody in the world listens to what is rooted in Western European and African music, the mixture of Western Europeans and African slaves. Now, the language in hip-hop comes from Negro spirituals because, for one, they were uneducated, so they kind of had to figure out the language for themselves. Now, not to defend slave drivers at all, but science at the time was such that many people legitimately believed, through a combination of religion and bad interpretations of religion and bad science, that black people were lesser, and it was their job to work for the betterment of the whites. And I mean, a lot of people believed this because it was as interpreted by their churches and confirmed through bad science, which was not always practiced in bad faith. It's not that they were trying to oppress the peoples, it's just what it looked like to some people who were observing it through a very biased lens, which again is not to forgive them for it. I mean, you should forgive, but it's not to excuse it or apologize for it. Like, no, it's not an apologetic description. It's just a simple fact that many involved didn't know it was wrong because they really believed these bad interpretations of the Bible and also really bad science. Now, as time went on, it became clear that that science was wrong and that the black people weren't savages, that they could be educated, and that really they're no different than the white people who were thought to be better by the white people, not by the black people. And I am simplifying race here. There's more than just white and black. There's Italian, the way Italians and Spanish and British treated West Africans versus South Africans versus East Africans is all very different. So the race relations and the races that exist are much more complicated. I'm just keeping things simple. Simple in explaining how Kanye West is the best artist of all time, except for possibly me and Dolly. But that's my biased opinion. My unbiased opinion is that Kanye is the best. So anyway, So Negro spirituals, and that after slavery, Jim Crow laws came into effect, for-profit prisons came into effect. So rather than slaves, the way they controlled the population of people that they feared and at the time, didn't really know how to feed, because we didn't have the same capabilities of production, so we were overpopulated. And so again, it's not necessarily bad faith. It was just handled very, very, very wrongly. And I say it's not entirely bad faith because white people there were also, in number, there were as many white people, or nearly as many white people, maybe even more. I'm not sure of the numbers, that were not treated as bad as black people, but that were also extremely poor and would often be incarcerated just to keep the population there. Now, you're wondering, well, what does incarceration have to do with that? It's just a way to keep people alive with the smallest possible amount of resources. Like, you get the worst food, you get a small bad bed, and that's it. And then you can also be used for labor. So it's a form of slavery. And here I recommend reading Michel Foucault's book, Discipline and Punish. Also, Jeremy Bentham's writing on the Panopticon, which Foucault covers in Discipline and Punish. I want a littler cigar. These actually use pipe smoke, pipe tobacco. I'm going to smoke some weed first. Now, tobacco and marijuana are huge drivers of slavery. That's what the primary cash crop for the American South was, for benefit of the Spanish and the British. And not only the Americas, or not only the U.S., but the islands, the Caribbean in particular, the most slaves in the world were imported into Brazil, and which is one of the reasons the Black Star Line failed, is because they used the wrong sea routes. Most slaves came through Brazil, so it's a much shorter trip and through different waters rather than from I forget where the port in the U.S. I forget exactly, but it's forgive me for my history on Marcus Garvey, but it's I think it was somewhere in the northeastern U.S., say maybe Boston or something like that, to Liberia, and that was also that's the northern passage rather than the middle passage, and so it was a route, but it was a much more dangerous, and I don't think they really knew. It's not like people were just giving them knowledge on how to get back to Liberia. I think it was Liberia, somewhere in West Africa. I'm pretty sure it was Liberia. I can talk about all this shit, but I can't get a cigar out of a wrapper. I mean, to be fair, the lighting is low, deliberately. I guess these things are child-proof. Alright. Finish this up. Now, not going to do a whole history of colonialism and slavery. We covered that well enough. For purposes of this conversation. But prison slang, gospel music became the foundation for street talk, a way of speaking that police, whoever, wouldn't understand. Jive talk in Airplane, or in the Juggernaut song. Now, so rap music started. Is it DJ Marley Marl? I'm not great with my golden age. DJ Marley Marl, Cool Mo D. I got in a little more around Eric B. and Rakim and Boogie Down Productions. I mean, that was still when I was like 4 and 5 years old, born in 1985. So what actually got me into hip-hop was Jay-Z and Tupac, which we'll get to in a minute. So essentially what the original DJs were doing was taking old records and scratching, turntablism. I don't think I really need to explain that, and I'm certainly not the right person to explain that. It's not something I've studied. It's something I've watched and appreciated. I think my personal favorite is probably DJ Jazzy Jeff. DJ Evil D is great. I mean, I'm talking turntablists, not just all DJs, but specifically turntablists. Kid Koala. Anyway, there's more I could name, but I don't want to, because I'd start leaving people out. But those are some of my favorites. Anyway, so Golden Age, what it was about was disruptive. It was in line with the civil rights movement, folk music. Gil Scott-Heron is kind of like the Black Bob Dylan, but even more powerful, to be honest. Like Dylan, you think of as direct, but Gil Scott was even more direct, and even more. I don't want to say primitive, but. I don't mean primitive in a bad way. That's the name of the Soulfly album. I love Soulfly. It's sort of more almost, I don't want to say traditional African, because it would be some specific part of it. I don't really know how to categorize his music. I just don't really know. And it's kind of like spoken word poetry more than singing. So like Bob Dylan sang poorly, and Gil Scott just kind of spoke. So that's kind of, at least my interpretation of, I don't know if he was the first MC, but I don't know if there was anybody doing it before him, and what he was doing is what I would describe as being an MC. And a poet, and one who spoke jive, but also he spoke very loose jive in a way that white people would understand. A rat bit my sister, but Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay my hospital bills, but Whitey's on the moon. That's pretty clear. That's the song everybody knows. He's got much deeper than that, and he's worth looking into. I listen to as much of his stuff as I've been able to find. but haven't really committed it to memory. I just kind of, it's like I learned it rather than absorbed the actual material. So it's like I got the message, but not not the. I got the message more than the messenger, though he was an excellent messenger. It's just that style isn't exactly. I don't. It's not something I enjoy listening to. It's something I think that everybody should listen to. But it's just really raw. And it's like, I mean, I compare these people to preachers. It's like he's like a reverend. And my understanding is that's the way that the black community would, especially in New York then, would see him as like a reverend, if not in name, in practice. That you listen to your preacher, you listen to Gil Scott. And now, I'm sorry, but I'm more familiar with the male figures than the females, and there are many important females involved in this as well. And R&B is I've never been a big R&B fan. I'm starting to like it more now, but just the way I grew up, I was into the harder stuff because that's the way I grew up. It was harder. Deep was one of the first groups that I got into. Well, I mean, they were the first group, because before them it was, like, I heard Jay-Z and I heard Tupac, and then I heard Mobb Deep, Hell on Earth, and right when it dropped, and I was 12 years old, and then I got into Tupac and got jumped into a gang of Bloods. Now, we weren't very serious, and this, I mean, it was just fist fights, and we'd shoot each other with high-powered pellet guns that don't generally penetrate your skin. So it was just kids playing and tagging under bridges. But sometimes people would get stabbed. Sometimes people would get beaten down pretty hard. Not by me. I generally speaking would. I mean, I'm a big guy, so I'd pull my punches and I'd just kind of police it, like make sure nobody was getting too out of hand, really, on either way. And at the end of the day, everybody was cool with me. So like nobody, like I never got jumped or anything like that, except when I got jumped in, and that even they pulled their punches. So anyway. So, you know, it was real, but not as real as it is for people growing up in streets of Compton. Now there are parts of Phoenix that are that bad, but where I grew up was kind of in the middle. Not middle class, but like middle poor. Like I didn't quite qualify. Like we lived in Section 8 neighborhoods, but we didn't qualify for the vouchers. So we overpaid to live in the ghetto. Now, again, not the bottom ghetto, but where I live now is actually the bottom ghetto in Mesa, but it's in West Mesa. But I live here by choice because it's cheap, and because, I'm just here by myself. I'm a 6'5", I'm a big guy. Like, there's no inherent threat to me walking around. Like, nobody messes with me, and I have a good relationship with the local people who do the messing. The issue here is bikers. Anyway, I got way off track currently. But that's just sort of explaining why I'm familiar with street talk. One of my tutors on hip-hop was from Atlanta. And when Kanye West's College Dropout came out, he helped me learn all the terms. Like I forget what let me pull up, because he put on College Dropout. So the first thing I heard was "We Don't Care," and I loved him immediately. But I remember like I started hearing words, and I'm like, I don't know, like what's he mean, like what's he talking about. But I don't remember if it was this song is really clear, and that's why like, so we forced to sell crack, rap, and get a job, and because and the dope money here is Lil Trey's scholarship, because there ain't no tuition for having no ambition, and ain't no loans for sitting your ass at home. So we forced to sell crack, rap, and get a job. And for people who are like, just get a job, it's not that easy, and those jobs are awful, and they treat you like shit, for long hours, hard work, and no pay. And you don't have to literally rap, and you don't have to literally sell crack, but those are rap is a way out. Selling crack is a way to survive the trap. Using crack is a good way to get deeper into the trap. And crack was introduced by, I think it was a CIA program, and Freeway Rick Ross. I'm not getting into that stuff now. I'd have to do a little. I know the stories. It's just I'd have to do a quick refresher on it. And it doesn't really matter for this conversation, though. Freeway Rick Ross does, and crack does. So, and so yeah, okay. So it was this line right here, and everybody's selling makeup, Jacobs, and bootleg tapes just to get they cake up. So I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, my friend from Atlanta told me about Jacob the jeweler, and it was makeup is like jewelry, and bootleg tapes just to get their cake up. So that is like if you walk around New York City, Chicago's probably like this too. I've never been to Chicago. I am from Saskatchewan though, so I know cold. But anyway, the point is, like, in those big cities, New York, Chicago, people are walking around selling bootleg CDs. Sometimes it's them, like sometimes it's legit. Here's my mixtape, check it out. And I've actually bought a lot of those from people on streets, and they're often good. Now, a lot of them are just scams where it's just mixes, and even that's not really a scam because they're still giving you music, and they're usually upfront about it, but it is still technically illegal, and not even like technically, it's just illegal. Now I'm talking people hustling their own stuff isn't, but bootleg tapes, you're gonna make more money on that because it's easier to say, hey, do you want to get that new Goody Mob, or do you want to hear something that I made and you don't know who I am? So anyway, we claim other people's kids on our income tax. We take that money, cop work, then push packs to get paid, and we don't care what people say. So anyway, this song is light on the slang because Kanye is an artist who he has a strong message, and he presents it in a way that's clear to people who aren't familiar with street slang. And I don't want to just say white people, though if you go to a Kanye show, it's mostly white people. I mean, depending on where the show is. But it's good that he does that, because, and this is where part of his artistic greatness comes in is that his stage shows are phenomenal. I've been to hundreds, if not thousands, of hip hop shows, and most rappers they don't even lip sync. They just have a track, a vocal track playing, and they'll say a few words. It's kind of like they're a Flavor Flav out there for a Chuck D, but if Chuck D was doing Flavor Flav's part and Flavor Flav wasn't even there. Now, I mean, Chuck D and Public Enemy, they're another great performer, great performers. They're definitely my favorite from that period, and I think Fear of a Black Planet and It Takes a Nation of Millions are two of the most important pieces in the civil rights movement. As well as just really good music. Alright, so before getting further into Kanye, that's an intro to him as a rapper. Now, him as a producer, and that's how he broke into the business. And I do mean broke into the business, because we'll get into this a bit, but Kanye is a Christian. Common is a 5%er. He's a Christian breaking into an Islamic culture. And basic instructions before leaving Earth, the Jizza, kill a priest. You can't trust preachers. You have to figure it out for yourself, because the white man has corrupted the message of the Bible, which, as Kanye has correctly identified, is good. Being a Christian is fine. Now, as a Christian, I also accept Muhammad as a prophet of God and consider the Quran a good book. I don't want to get into good, better, best, so I'm just going to say it's a good book. It's the Word of God. And that's worth a conversation for another time too. So anyway, turntablism turned into sampling. And I'm not sure exactly where the switch is. Maybe it was Eric B. Maybe it was Barley Barl. I don't know. I don't know my DJ history as much. But that turned into sampling. So they took old jazz music. Imagine jazz in the broadest sense. So all from hard bop to soul, rhythm, everything. So they would sample that, loop the beats, loop the drums, loop a piano, sample a trumpet, whatever. We got the jazz, we got the jazz, we got the jazz. So they started. Early great examples of that are Pete Rock, DJ Premier. They're probably my two favorite from that era. Diamond D is one that I've recently realized made a lot of some of my favorite music. And he's got an album coming out with Quali, which is definitely going to be quality. It's called Gotham. Anyway, so from these samplers, these guys sampled old music, 50s, 60s, 70s, 30s, anything from the distant past. Then comes in Puff Daddy, and he's like, he does a song where he literally just raps over Kashmir, and to this day I'm still angry at him for that. because he almost ruined Led Zeppelin. I couldn't listen to Led Zeppelin for a few years because Diddy is an extremely talented individual, but I can't listen to him. As a rapper, I just can't. And now he does have some much better stuff in his production discography than just playing Kashmir. But yeah, and he, it's not like he's a bad rapper. It's just that he's kind of like how Kanye was as a rapper in his early days. It's like he's got it. He's got it in him. It's just it's not natural for him. So it's something that I'm sure both of those guys had to work really hard at it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like I think production came natural, but rapping came with more of a more assistance, people helping them out, not just kind of finding it. And maybe I don't know. I mean, that's speculation. And also, I mean, I've talked to a lot of these guys over the years, from having gone to thousands of shows. No, I don't usually bug them because they put a lot of energy into those shows, and then usually want to get turned up after or whatever because of all that adrenaline. So it's just not the best time to talk to them. But I have, especially now in the era of the internet, been able to ask questions that I've been wondering about for years. So Diddy's productions, Puff Daddy, he showed people that we could sample music that's coming out now. And then there was a whole bunch of lawsuits, and he also, not himself, like I'm not saying he's directly responsible for this, but to this day there are a lot of the annoying copyright laws surrounding music are because of the way Diddy sampled it. And again, I'm not saying what he did was good. I mean, I am saying what he did was good. I'm just saying that that's also the reason that there's all these insane copyright laws. And it's not that artists shouldn't get paid. It's just that, I'm too high my music theory isn't good enough with my too high brain to like arpeggio or whatever isn't something you can copyright, like or like a box power chord progression, just simple chord changes. Like you can't copyright that. It's just music. And what these people are doing with it, people like Kanye, is often far more creative than just using those simple chords. Now, the interesting thing is that it sounds a lot simpler because it's just it's a short loop, but finding those loops and making them sound different is absurdly difficult, which is why so many rappers sample the same songs. Part of that has to do with copyright too, but they know how to sample certain parts of certain songs that are just sort of simple in the right kind of simple. Nautilus is the number one, but I forget. I shouldn't forget, but I just always forget. And somebody needs to buy me a Patek Philippe Nautilus watch one of these days. Alright, so Kanye then took what Diddy did with production, but he did it times 1,000. And he started off with, I guess his breakout track was Izzo from Jay-Z on the Blueprint. before that, Trina and Tamara. I feel like I know that name, but oh, they're from Gary. Oh, interesting. So maybe some sort of Jackson connection. And then The Truth, Beanie Siegel. That's his connection to Jay-Z. It's like if he makes a good Beanie Siegel song, and then Jay-Z's like, yeah, all right, you can put one on the blueprint, and then all of a sudden he's doing Scarface, Quali, '03 Bonnie and Clyde, and then B.R. Wright with Luda on Trina, her, I forget the name of that album, and then that this is 2002. Then 2003, he comes in Luda, Lucifer, and then his own tracks. So he breaks in. Through the Rock, obviously, but he broke in through the top. He didn't just. And No ID worked with him too. The Chicago he's probably one of in my top 3 DJs, bar none. I like him as a DJ better than Kanye, but that's just a personal taste thing. I think what Kanye does is far more. Part of what makes Kanye a great artist is he takes big risks, and he's basically never missed. He takes big risks and they always pay off, which is why he's the best. Because if the bigger the risk, the bigger the chance of failure, and he just doesn't miss. There's some, like, I don't like 808s and Heartbreak, but I can't listen to that because of my own relationship with my mother. He makes music that's so powerful, I literally can't listen to it. And then if you put on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and I'm just going to cry for the whole hour and 20 minutes it's playing. Because those are my experiences. Now, I want to give one specific example of how specifically Kanye is an artistic genius, and it connects 3 of his songs. It's Diamonds Are from Sierra Leone. My Way Home, and Through the Wire, and Crack Music. 4 songs. I know them, but I gotta pull them up. So here's another thing. There's a website called Genius that explains a lot of hip-hop, but it explains a lot of it wrong, because even the rappers who make some of these songs, even some of these MCs, don't understand the references they're making. Most of the best of them do, but imagine like a game of telephone. It's not their fault, it's just that some of them don't even know the origin of their own slang. And the only reason I do is, and I certainly don't know all of it, but the only reason I do is because I've read every book I can. I've watched interviews with everybody I can, and not just rappers. I mean, Huey P. Newtons, and not just black figures, either Latinos. I mean, every part of the world. I've tried to expose myself to everything possible. So, first is this explanation is not chronological, but the story unfolds in this way. Um, we're going to come back to Diamonds Are From Sierra Leone, but the relevant line in this song to explain My Way Home is, close your eyes and imagine, feel the magic, Vegas on acid, seen through Yves Saint Laurent glasses. So, okay, now My Way Home. Yeah, they say home is where the hate is, my dome is where fate is. So what he's saying, now I'm not reading this from I'm looking at it on Genius, but I'm not using their interpretations. I'm telling you what it means. And now if they say it means something else, I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. So they say home is where the hate is, my dome is where fate is. What that means is people would immediately think your own home, because a lot of poor homes are broken homes in one way or another. Incarceration rates, people working hard, being exhausted, so everybody's kind of bitter. But I think by the end of this song, I think what he means by home is a double entendre for both home like your home, but home as in the ghetto, your community. Now, my dome is where fate is. So what he's saying is that, okay, we're in this situation that's bad, but it's up to me to find a way out. Nobody's going to get me out of this. And then he says, I stroll where souls get lost like Vegas, seen through the eyes of rebel glasses. Now, remember, Diamonds Are From Sierra Leone, and close your eyes and imagine the magic, Vegas on acid, seen through Yves Saint Laurent glasses. So that's how Kanye is seeing the world now that he's made it. But Common is talking about the ghetto, where I stroll where souls get lost like Vegas, seen through the eyes of rebel glasses. So not Yves Saint Laurent glasses, and they're lost souls because they're doing crack. Pray to God that my arms reach the masses. I'm not totally sure what that means, but I think he means armed rebels, so I think it's a play on that. I think there's some African history that he's talking about, in part because of the next line, the young smoke grass in grassless jungles. Now, grassless jungle, concrete jungle, Bob Marley, smoke grass, so it's definitely a Bob Marley reference. And he's talking about the concrete jungle, but the arms that reach the masses are produced in the concrete jungle and distributed all around the world, but also among street gangs. Rubber band together in cashless bundles, and that's just to confirm that they're selling crack for dollar bills. We wear struggle in chains, divided only hustle remains. So, alright, only built for Cuban links. The chain is symbolic for the collars slaves would wear. When I wear a chain, and I don't usually, but when I wear chains, I wear broken chains. He says, divided, only hustle remains. So the way they're, what he's saying is, like, I wear broken chains to represent that I'm not a slave, even though I live in slave-like conditions relative to the modern world. He's saying we wear struggle in chains, divided, only hustle remains. So you get the Cuban links, and the Cuban links represent the togetherness rather than separation. So you do need to work as a community, and if you don't, you gotta hustle. But at the same time, you kind of gotta hustle as a community. Which comes up in the next line, making sense of it, we hustle for change. Revolution ain't a game, it's another name for life fighting. He just means this is serious business. Someone to stay in their corner like Mike Tyson, a pit bull. Hype's fighting for hits to heighten they hell. Don't he know he can only get as high as he fell? So the hits that are heightening their hell is the crack they're smoking to make their lives worse. Don't he know he could only get as high as he fell? The more you throw your life away on drugs like crack, you're going to fall lower. Show money becomes bail, relationships become jail. There's a lot he could mean by show money, but I think he means that even a lot of these rappers keep their criminal roots. So they're making money doing shows, but they're spending it on getting bailed out because they're gangsters. Children are unheld. There's no love. I wish love was for sale. Behold the pale horse, got me trapped like Arkell. I bail, and that's where he ends, and we'll get into the rest later. But I wish love was for sale is clear enough. I mean, that means a few things, but pimps and hoes, that's another option to get them. Behold the pale horse. The pale horse is the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Behold the pale horse, death. Got me trapped like Arkell. I believe that's a reference to the idea that R. Kelly was set up by the FBI, but I'm not really sure. That's not a story I've really looked into. I bail, and then it goes to Gil Scott-Heron singing, and it might not be such a bad idea if I never went home again. I'm on my way home. I left 3 days ago, but no one seems to know I'm gone. Home is where the hatred is. Home is filled with pain, and it might not be such a bad idea if I never went home again. He's talking about killing himself. I'm not saying that he's entertaining the idea, but that's what he's talking about. It's depressing as fuck. But this contrasts with where Kanye is now in Diamonds Are Forever, or Diamonds from Sierra Leone. Diamonds Are Forever is the James Bond thing that he samples. But before we get into that, My Way Home is followed up by Crack Music, which continues the story from My Way Home. It's him explaining what Common had said poetically and very cryptically. Kanye is like, it's that crack music. So that's a direct explanation that's set up by a line in an earlier song on the album. Like the levels of thought the thought process that goes into that, like, that's not an accident. Now, before we get into Diamonds from Sierra Leone, let's jump back to Through the Wire. I think Through the Wire is Kanye's equivalent of Tupac's If I Die Tonight. I think that this is a theory. I haven't heard anyone explain it. I've heard people allude to this, but it's not that he got in a car crash. and it's not a safety belt that saved his life. It's that he got beat down, and someone was like, "No, don't kill him." And so he got his ass beat, almost killed, jaw broke, and with your jaw broke, you can't do If I Die Tonight the same night because you just physically can't. And he did it, I'm certain, as soon as he physically could. Whether or not it was a car, maybe he got ran off the road. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know the story. But my theory is that he got beat down. And further, it could be for any number of reasons, but it could be because he's a Christian and not a Muslim. Might not. I'm not saying that with any kind of certainty. It could be because he grew up kind of middle class Chicago, not totally poor, like some of the other people that he's working with. I mean, I don't know. And it could just be a car accident, and he could just be showing his determination, and that God saved him. Like there's a million ways that it could be understood. But anyway, so he's like, nothing's gonna stop me from rapping. That's his message on that song, regardless of how he got into that condition. So Diamonds are from Sierra Leone. It seems like it's a pretty obvious song. Like it seems like he's talking about conflict diamonds. And he is. With a shout out to Jacob the jeweler. He's talking about conflict diamonds. But it's also kind of secretly the biggest diss track in music. In this song, he's saying fuck you and 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 fuck you. I'm Kanye West, and I'm bigger than all of you, and I'm better than all of you. And if you don't get that, you need to reread the song or listen to it again. It's his best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, Bret Hart moment. And I mean, Eminem can't touch him. He did Rap God, where he tried to take down the world, but nobody can ever write a better diss track than Diamonds from Sierra Leone, because it's a diss track that people don't even know is a diss track. I mean, I think enough of the right people know, but most people don't. Oh, Michelle Gondry plays on it too. I didn't know that. Or Michelle. Anyway. The point is, the levels of thought that go into what Kanye does is unreal, because it's not an accident. Even if the accident was an accident, where he got to, what he does, how he creates, none of that is an accident. He knows everything he's saying. He knows everything he's doing. And yeah, sometimes his brain works in overdrive, but mine does too. Sometimes he's confidently wrong, but so am I. And so is everybody else. Sometimes they're not as loud about it, but certainly as confidently wrong. Anyway. Possible seizure warning. I gotta do a little outro thing here.